and welcome to the regular meeting of the Recreation and Parks Commission. Would everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jackie, roll call, please.
Commissioner Stolnick. Present. Commissioner Farfan.
Present.
Commissioner Lubes is not with us this evening. Vice Chair Davis.
Present.
And Chairperson Mota.
I'm here.
Thank you.
Okay, presentations tonight. Scott Morgan, General Manager of the Lakes at El Segundo, will provide an update on the lake's operations, activities, and events.
Starting off with the best
And
first.
welcome.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commission. Thank you, Meredith. Thanks for having me. I appreciate that. So I'll start off with some of the highlights that are going on right now at the lakes. As I may have shared the last meeting, I've started supporting a certain veterans group for clinics that we hold for them every month, which I know that Commissioner Farfan had joined us a month or so, I think last month's event. And we'll get anywhere from 25 to 30 vets. Another golf professional had started a nonprofit called Vets Hole in One group, and I'd encourage you to look up Spectrum TV, which is the local Spectrum TV. They do local stories, human interest stories. And I spoke to the reporter there, and she came out and did an incredible piece. So if you were to go on the Spectrum TV's website and search the Lakes El Segundo, you'd see the great piece that she put out there for that particular group. So we're having great success with that, supporting the vets. And the nonprofit, basically we teach them, another pro, myself, we teach the pros, and then the nonprofit buys them lunch after the clinic or after they play. Secondly, as we've just been informed that we have we now have been told that we're going to be operating throughout the summer at the end of August. So our junior camp, which is one of our big events of the year, we're now solidifying the dates for all those summer camps, and those are going to launch here in the next couple of days of what those dates are for our junior summer camps. And then currently we're, as you know, this moving target that's been over top of the lakes for these last 5 or 6 years, where there were, people are trying to book their events in the last 4 or 5 months for the summer, and we weren't able to book those. So right now we're in the process of trying to recover some of those. There's about 30 or 31 of them that have tried to book events throughout the summer. So now I'm just in the process of, I saved all their emails and their phone numbers, and now it's just simply reaching back to them to see if we can't recover some of those events. Meredith and I are in the process of negotiating and figure out a fumigation job at the lakes, whether it to be a tent job as you're familiar with homes, or if it's the orange treatment that they locally treat. We're in the process of trying to figure that out, exactly what we're going to do that. And then, unless you've lived on Maui for the last 30 days, the rain that we've had here in Southern California, so that's obviously a difficult point on revenue when you're trying to get golfers out there and with the rain. Although the grass is absolutely beautiful and the flowers love it and the trees are growing really fast, the only complaints now is that the rough is too high and their ball is too deep in the rough, because we can't keep up with the growth of the grass, like I'm sure you're aware of your front lawns like mine, and how fast it grows. So to handle those complaints of them complaining about the long rough, I just simply handed my business card to help them with a lesson to keep the ball in the fairway as opposed to in the longer grass. And my last point is a year ago we turned off, there's a platform called Golf Now. So that's an online platform with an app where you can book tee times. And we were on that platform a couple years ago, and in light of things, we had turned it off. Well, now since we have the summer, I've turned it back on. And what that means is that you can go to the Golf Now platform, and I can basically strategically open tee times on their platform in times that were really slow, and people can book times within that app. And then we're notified when people book those tee times. So that's simply in an effort to, now that we have our summer, we're just trying to get the needle that's been going down in revenue, we're just simply trying to get that needle to stop, and maybe even get an uptick for the summer months that we're going to be open. But revenue-wise, we're just simply down. We're just continuing to try and inform the guests that come in who are currently surprised that we're still open, so we're just continuing that narrative that the city is still negotiating, trying to figure out when this timeline is going to be. So it's taken a hit, I believe, on the revenue, but you know, for instance, the driver range, although the driver range in the golf course was slightly up in December from the previous year, and I think that's simply still some numbers that we're seeing because of the increase in greens fees and buckets in April of 18. So that's why there's a little bit of uptick. So I think what I found is that the number of players are exactly the same. The range customers, those numbers are exactly the same, but that little uptick is from the slight increase that we did. That's short and sweet, unless you have any questions for me. That's my report. I'm glad to answer.
I have one. With the Top Golf, they're going to be tearing down the clubhouse, correct?
Correct. That's the plan.
Why would we be spending money to fumigate then?
That's a great point, and that's what we haven't committed to that yet, but we have a termite problem. So we've had some experiences that are very unfortunate with termites. So it's something that Meredith and I are working on to exactly figure that out. Whether it's worth it, do we continue to book an event where termites might land on the guests, or do we try and eliminate the termites and still try and sell an event? So, but you're exactly right. I mean, that's a dollar amount that's going to be an expense to the lakes, and you're right. If they're going to bulldoze that building in October, is it worth doing it? So, but we haven't decided fully yet. If that answers your question.
Okay.
Scott, you mentioned that you've been doing some reach back to the people that were trying to book. Have you been successful at all with them?
Not yet. I've reached out of the 31. I've contacted 5 of them, and they've selected another facility, but I still have several more to go to try and recover some of those events.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, public communications related to commission business only, and that is within the subject matter under the jurisdiction of the commission. 5 minutes per person, please.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Patrick Stanford. I'm here representing AYSO Region 92 tonight. Just a couple of brief updates. We have done quite well, have several teams that are going on both in the league play and the All-Stars going on to sections out in Riverside coming up next month. So we'd like to congratulate them. Our U10 girls, I believe, are the primary ones who are moving on, and I believe also our U12 boys are moving on to that. We are also scrambling a little bit to make our spring season. Field allocations have become a critical issue. We have short about 4 hours worth of field space for our U12 program right now. We are reaching out to other regions to try and find space. Sean and Meredith and Rexon Park have been trying to help us out, and unfortunately some of the other youth groups have not been willing to share as much as they have in previous years. We have also reached out to the high school on potential to potentially rent the field space from there. But we're short about 4 hours. If anybody has any ideas of where we can find 4 hours of field space for about a 70-yard long field, we were most happy to look at whatever options we can come up with to be able to do that. Thank you all very much. I look forward to Christopher's presentation tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close public communications. Move on to the consent calendar. Approval of the minutes of the Recreation and Parks Commission regular meeting of January 16th, 2019. Anyone? Anyone?
I make a motion to approve the minutes.
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 4-0. There's no unfinished business. New business. Consideration and possible action regarding the request for placement of a donated tree with memorial plaque at Memory Row honoring Esther Troxel. The donation by Judy Kaufroth. Hope I said that correctly. 2 recommendations. Accept the donated tree and memorial plaque and approve the placement at Memory Row, and or 2, alternatively discuss and take other action related to this item. The fiscal impact on this one, staff time is to be absorbed into the operational budget. So, who is going to take that one?
Good evening. Christopher Henson will take this item.
Okay, go ahead.
Good evening, Commission. In the report, you will see that the applicant, Judy Kaufroth, they're honoring Esther Troxel, and there's an obituary also included in your packet. Judy could not make it here tonight, but she is represented by a friend of hers, Juanita, and then the daughter of Esther and her husband as well, if you have any questions for them.
Okay. Would you like to speak? It's not necessary. If you would, please step up and state your name. Thank you.
So I was a colleague of Esther's and a friend. She worked as a teacher in Inglewood Unified School District with several of us for 35 years, and she lived in El Segundo for the last 30 years, right? And the group of retired teachers that we're all friends, took her out to lunch once a month and visited with her during her illness. And we thought this would be a wonderful way to honor her. Since she was such she loved this city. She really loved this city. So, I don't know, do you have any questions about it?
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Anybody have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Darsa, D-A-R-S-A.
Did you want to take it?
I'd like to make a motion to recommend the approval of the placement of the memorial at Memorial Row.
I second that.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That's 4-0. Thank you very much. Okay, number 2, consideration and possible action to adopt a formal policy related to scheduled athletic field rest and renovation to ensure the preservation and safety of the most heavily used turf areas. The fiscal impact, $15,000 annually. Recommendations. Number 1, approve the proposed schedule for recovery renovation to be implemented at Brett Field during July through August in odd years, and at Richmond Field mid-June through mid-August in even years. And 2, approve the modification of rules of the Summer Adult Co-ed Softball League to include divisions and a home run rule appropriate for shorter fields. Or 3, alternatively discuss and take other action related to this item. The way I'm seeing this looks like it's a tag team here. Christopher and Sean. So who's first?
Yes, so it is a tag team effort. Christopher, Aricia, and Sean all work together on this, and they will go through the options for our recommendations on how to properly rest and renovate the 2 fields and some of the program impacts related to that.
We're specifically talking about George Brett and Richmond Street fields. There are the city's multi-use turf fields, multi-sports use. These pictures were taken after the soccer season this last year. As you can see, there's considerable bare areas, there's stressed turf. The soccer does quite a bit of an impact on the fields. Historically, in the last few years, there has not been enough of the rest time and renovation maintenance that's required to upkeep the fields. So this has kind of been a growing issue. The bare areas get a little larger every year. This is our goal, to have nice green turf, well manicured, and this satisfies the user groups as well. So how do we get there? What we're proposing is what we're calling a recovery renovation plan. And this plan will be, even though it could be done every year, we're looking at doing it every other year and alternating fields. And this is to be performed in the summer months. And the reason for that is we're recommending a hybrid Bermuda turf grass seed, and that requires the warm summer temperatures to germinate. It's an excellent turf grass for soccer, and that will help eliminate some of the bare areas. Even it'll stand up to the use. But it does require complete closure of the field from anywhere from 8 to 12 weeks. 8 weeks is kind of a minimum. 12 weeks is more ideal. The cost for this type of renovation runs between $12,000 and $15,000 on contracted services. Even though the city staff is capable of doing this work, we don't have the equipment to perform the work. And this is what that process includes. It's kind of a 9-step operation, starting out with irrigation assessment, making adjustments, repairs as required. Next is doing a very low mowing, almost a scalping, if you will. Next is aeration, which is very, very important in these fields. Those bare areas are very compacted right now. It just does not allow much to grow. And the aeration is very important in relieving that. An optional step is dethatching. Kind of depends on, that's something that doesn't have to be done every time. It could be stretched out over maybe a 4 or 5 year period. That helps the turf breathe, if you will. After that is field leveling, which is really just filling in the low areas and any holes and so forth. Next step would be fertilizing. And on that, what we plan to do is utilize some soils reports so we can really pinpoint the nutrients that each field needs. After fertilizing, we'll be overseeding, and again, as I mentioned, the hybrid Bermuda is what we're recommending. Covering that up will be a top dressing. This helps protect the seeds from wind, hopefully the birds as well. And next, we just start watering, and we maintain it. This operation here takes about, it can be done in less than a week. And then we close the field completely and watch it grow. So how do we keep it there? This requires another operation, which we're calling aeration fertilization plan. And this operation ideally would be at least 3 times a year, in spring, fall, and winter. It does not impact the playability or any scheduling. This can be done in one day. Play can resume the next day. As I mentioned, the aeration is probably one of the most important aspects that we can do on these fields to keep the turf alive and growing. Right now, Land Care is contracted to do this twice a year, spring and fall. Contracted services is roughly $6,000 to $7,000 per field. Again, city staff does not have the aerating equipment, but it does have the expertise. When we do this in the winter, we're looking at overseeding bare areas or spot areas with a kind of a rye tall fescue, which is a cool season grasses. Last year, or this past winter, we spent close to $1,000 doing that very same thing for both the fields, Richmond and George Brett. So recommendations. Here we are, our proposed maintenance schedule on even years, and this is all based upon accommodating the Little League tournament that happens every other year. And on even years, Richmond Street Field would receive the recovery renovation process. At the same time, Brett Field would only get an aeration operation. Then in odd years, we'd reverse that. We'd come back with Richmond Street just getting the aeration, and then Brett Field would get the complete recovery renovation. And Sean will kind of take you through some of the programming modifications and changes that we're looking at to accomplish the window of time that we're looking at.
Good evening, Commissioners. So we tried to simplify it as best we could. It's quite a puzzle piece trying to get all this stuff to get figured out. But just like Christopher had mentioned, you can kind of see the breakdown of what's going to exactly happen. Little League will have the impact on those opposite years. July 1st will be the cutoff when they have their tournament, cut it off, and then go from there. And then softball, one impact will be our city co-ed league will be moved completely away from Brett Field from now on, and everything will be played on Richmond Field. So that will be a different game for sure. So the rules will change a little bit. The number one rule will be our home run rule. So that will be something that we would have to, up against Stevenson and the Jocelyn Center. Those are automatic outs. So that's a big one for us. And then another impact for our girls softball league, they'll be over at Richmond for the beginning of fall ball and then transfer over to the Richmond field after that. So a lot of moving parts with that, but that's kind of the breakdown, the simplest way to break it down.
Sean, can I interrupt you? You mean softball field? You said Richmond.
Oh,
for
I apologize.
Softball.
Sorry. So sorry, Bob, you were looking at me. You should have said something. The co-ed softball league will be out at the softball field. I apologize. I didn't mean to say. Again, we're required to schedule all-star practice. So after July 1st, basically, all-stars that's notoriously been out there, not in a bad way, but have been out there longer, July 1st is the cutoff date. So they know that they've got to work with Center Street or different options throughout the city to have their remaining practices. Again, relocation of the co-ed softball league, and then girls softball will be moved to Richmond until August, and then come back after the slow pitch softball season. Some rules that we talked about and what we're going to put into play for the upcoming co-ed softball league is the home run rule. Hit a home run, it's an automatic out. We've used, and it's the third bullet point, we've always used quite a soft ball for the co-ed league because we got some guys and girls out there that can really hit it. We've had some instances where it's went to the senior center. So going to a much softer ball, we're kind of right at the lowest we can be at. But I think that'll help. Looking at some of the bats with John and A to Z officiating will help us. And then another thing that Meredith and Christopher and I and RC had talked about is breaking into divisions. Every other league, co-ed league or adult league that we run is in divisions. A division, B division, typically soccer, basketball, kickball is not one we run. Excuse me. But those other leagues, we've seen a real good competitive balance. You got these guys out here playing college soccer against me that's played 15 years ago, and it's tough to, you're going out there losing 11-0, and we had a real tough time with keeping people around and guys getting frustrated and teams getting frustrated because they're losing 11-0. So another thing we're going to do this year is we're going to, for the first time, we did it a little last year, but for the first time split into an A division and a B division. Most adults are able to look at that and kind of understand kind of where they fall, and we can work with them. And it's kind of that soccer relegation. You can move up and down throughout the summers like we do in soccer and basketball as well. And then kind of like it says there, enhanced safety. Meredith and I talk about these guys that come up and some of these girls that played in college, and they're hitting the ball. I mean, I played baseball in high school, and I watch them hit the ball, and you kind of cringe sometimes and go, I wonder. So it's really going to put the competition in the right places. These company teams typically, and it's not always, but typically the company teams have a little more recreational, laid back. Hey, we're going to go out afterwards, but they're a little bit calmer about the competition part. So if we can get them all together in groups and divisions, I think that'll really help with some of these real competitive teams and make it a little bit more fun for everybody. Similar level competition. It'll change a lot of the dynamics. Meredith and I had kind of talked about it when we had some of the meetings about the game is not going to be just these guys coming up and girls coming up and trying to hit it as far as they can. A little more strategy involved. So I don't think it'll change the attendance and participation very much, but it'll change the dynamics of the game a little bit more. Line drives and different things instead of these, guys and girls trying to hit 400-foot home runs. And then the other thing that I think that's important that Aricia, Christopher, and Meredith and I had talked about is there's a permanent place. We're going to have the league at the same place every year for the same time. So we're not going, and listening to them say how much they love Brett and how they're frustrated with Richmond, and then they love Brett and then they're frustrated with Richmond, gives us a central place. Everybody knows this is where we play our league games now, and that'll give us a central field. So those are kind of the overviews of a few of those things. A puzzle piece for sure on my end. You know, Christopher's stuff is interesting as well, but it's definitely a puzzle piece trying to get it to work. I will tell you that I've spoken to all the league presidents, Ted Lappy, Matt McMillan, and Barry with AYSO. We've talked to all of them. They all understand that this is something that they can work with their schedules, and they understand what they're going to get out of this. Everyone wants these perfect fields, and they want these things to happen. Christopher, let's get this thing to grow in the rain. Good luck in December trying to get Brett Field to grow. And it's interesting being around him and learning about all this stuff. It'll really give us an opportunity to kind of showcase our fields the way they deserve to be showcased. So if there's any questions, technical questions, Christopher is probably the guy to ask. And if there's any field questions or allocation things, I'm here to answer any questions as well.
I have a question for you, Sean.
Yeah.
You said you talked to all of them, the presidents, Ted, Matt, and my question is, have you talked to anyone from the co-ed softball league and any of those teams that have been here for many, many years? Did you get any response back?
I have. I'll be honest, I haven't really put that out there yet because I didn't want to kind of put the information out there before we even had the information in place and got it proposed. There's some conversation. You know, I think a lot of people, for a lot of adults, it's getting together with their buddies on Thursday night versus the softball and the competitiveness and winning a league title and getting a T-shirt from El Segundo. I sure hope, God, if it's not that, I don't understand quite, but there's a few. There's some conversation, and I think there will be some people that'll have some opinions about it, but overall, I think that the 2 or 3 people, I'll be honest, I haven't talked to too many people. It was pretty positive because they understand what we're trying to do. And I think it's interesting because a lot of the groups have most of their children are playing in our league, so they understand the reason why we're trying to do it. So I think overall, yes, we're going to have some pushback at points, Bob. We know how it goes with this stuff, but I think it'll be, it'll be fine. I think most people, we've had 30 teams for forever, so I think we'll have a pretty good turnout again this year.
I think it's a good idea what you're trying to do, but I'd like to hear some of that feedback. So when you start getting it, can you let us know? I think the change is necessary, but I want to make sure it is the right thing to do, and for all groups, not just the youth groups, all the stakeholders in here. Anyone else? I guess I'm going to ask the question to Christopher. I've done all those things because I've done it at the high school field. 12 weeks, if you can get it done in 12 weeks, very good. I hope it works. 12 weeks is a short amount of time for full renovation.
Well, the key is germinating the seed.
Absolutely.
And getting it roots established to take usage.
So I think it's great if we can pull this off every other year.
And I think it will be somewhat of a progression. You know, it's not going to be like night and day from day one. Each year you can get the fields a little bit better. And that aeration and fertilization program, getting that on a regular basis is really going to help as well as doing that complete renovation.
Great. I hope it all works. It'll be great if it does. So thank you. Sure. Anybody else?
Yeah, I was going to say, Brett Outfield really needs it. Over the years of being on the Little League board and with the All-Star tournaments and with the boys there in the outfield, you can't really see it from the bleachers, but when you're an outfielder out there and there are some big holes and there are some ankles to be turned out there and some patches, it really needs to be done, not only for injuries, but just just the field maintenance, you know, it needs to be done. And when you were showing all the different stages of what needs to be done in the 12-week program, I was thinking the whole time, you could get Bob to do that work, because he does do the work there at the high school, you know, each year, and he knows what needs to be done. I was like, and you have the staff, but you don't have the equipment. I'm like, Bob does all that work.
We'll sign him up.
Bob's getting too old. Well, thank you. Unless you have something else that you want to let us know. Oh, I'm sorry. Please go ahead.
Kind of along those lines, I'm a West Side guy, and Richmond, you're going to take away one of the primary functions of that field, and that's on days like, you know, weekends like this with the rain, is the mudsliding. But I agree, it needs to be done, and it, you know, ever since I was a kid, we used to go out there on the weekends and go, it's raining, and we knew we could find mud there. So it'll be nice to have true grass. The one question that I really did have was a little bit more financial. You mentioned that your staff would be able to do it, but you don't have the equipment. Just ballpark, what would that equipment run, and kind of again, ballpark.
Right. Some of it depends on the packages that you can put together. We're looking at 20, 30,000, and it could even be higher, depending on what type of unit that you're dragging the equipment with. You know, some of the items you can do with like just a John Deere utility vehicle. Others require a tractor, so to speak. And then some of it's how fast can you do it, and you know.
Well, I mean, at the 12 weeks, I assume that fast is a key player. You're going to want something fairly quick. And could this equipment, if we were to purchase, be used at other fields so that poor Bob doesn't have to do all of it by himself?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So it would have more than just these two fields of use if we were to get it.
Sure. Yeah.
I think that'd be interesting to research, not maybe in the short term, but long term. If we're going to be putting, you know, 10 to 15 a year into, you know, the fields, long term it might be worth it for us to look at, you know, equipment, to have quality equipment that you could use at all the fields and save poor Bob's back.
And I'm, like I said, because I've done it, I think it's the way they have it proposed here is the right way to do it. Let someone else come in and do it, and let staff maintain it after that. But
and staff has a lot to do with just maintaining the infields,
right,
which requires a lot of detailing work and so forth.
So, looking at what they want us to either approve or not tonight. Number one, approve the proposed schedule. I'm going to make a motion that we do approve the proposed schedule for recovery renovation to be implemented at Brett Field during July and August in odd years, and at Richmond Field mid-June through mid-August in even years. Let's do these one at a time. So that is the motion. Is there a second?
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
That is 4-0 on that one. The second one is, since I'm reading it, I want to see. Make the motion to approve the modification of the rules for the Summer Adult Co-ed Softball League to include divisions and a home run rule appropriate for shorter fields. And I'd like to get feedback on how the adult softball league is taking that. That is my motion. Is there a second?
To get feedback first before.
We have to do it for this year, so that's we'll take feedback because we can always change that. So that is my motion for now. Is there?
I second that.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Number 3. Discussion and possible action to select a date to hold a special meeting regarding the Acacia and Washington Park designs. The recommendations are select a date to hold a special meeting, or 2, discuss and take other action. Meredith.
Yes, thank you very much. So As you know, we have been in the community engagement process for designing Acacia Park and the Washington Playground. RHA Landscape Architects is our architectural firm working on it. Originally, our schedule had put the architects here in front of the commission to unveil or get your feedback on the preliminary final designs at our March meeting. And since then, the annual California Parks and Recreation Society conference has been scheduled up in Sacramento, and so the architects will be attending that conference all week in Sacramento during the week of March 20th. And so they're unavailable to be here, so I wanted to provide the option in order to stay on schedule, in which we would want to hear the commission feedback, get a recommendation to take to City Council that we would propose in City Council in the month of April, is to potentially take a look at your calendars and determine if you'd like to have a special meeting, possibly the week prior, if everybody is available and willing to do that, so that we can stay on that project timeline. And if not, then we'll wait till April. But that was our original timeline, and we'd like to stick to it as much as possible. And so Jackie has has looked at the calendar for the room, and there are a couple dates the week prior that would accommodate a special meeting. And of course, you have the option of possibly rescheduling just the March meeting to that date, or having a special meeting and then the regular meeting the following week as well.
Okay. First of all, what dates do you have open the week prior? And let's go there. Jackie,
Sure.
what days were open?
We have the 11th through the 13th. The 13th is a Wednesday, so that would just put us back 1 week if you're available. That would be the first choice for us.
The 13th would be the Wednesday before.
Yes.
And we could have our regular meeting at that day too. I don't know, how does that work for? 13 works for me.
We're not doing the Gateway anymore on the 13th, right?
No, that's on the 5th.
On the 5th, okay.
And then that would include our regular meeting also.
If that's how you'd like it, then how we would agendize that is basically an adjournment of the regular meeting, and then agendize a special meeting instead.
Okay.
That's
Well, let's make this a motion. Is that what you want this to turn into a motion? So the date that we'll make a motion for the discussion and possible discussion of the Acacia and Washington Park designs for March 13th at 6 p.m. And that will include our regular meeting on the same evening. That is the motion.
I second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Are we okay with that?
Yes.
Okay, and you'll do all the obvious paperwork. Jackie. Okay. I got through those pretty quick. Reports. Report of subcommittees. Aquatic Subcommittee. Anything?
Meeting was canceled this month, although there was a lot of activity within aquatics. The committee had been canceled due to other arrangements.
Okay. Thank you. Golf Course Subcommittee.
Unfortunately, I was not able to attend that meeting, so if I can defer to Meredith here.
I'm going to defer to Christopher. Christopher attended for me at the golf course meeting.
You can all defer to Scott. He's right here too. All right, Christopher, go ahead.
We had a grand time. We met. The biggest issue really was getting some clarification or direction on the time frame that Topgolf was going to be coming in. As Scott mentioned in his report, they're having requests for events and so forth, and the time is getting short to make some commitments for the summer and so forth. That was kind of the primary comments and discussion.
Okay. As long as we're in the golf course portion of it, Is there an exact date, Meredith? That you can tell us or not?
There's not an exact
Okay.
date. We're still in conversations
Okay.
with Topgolf, and the next step in that process is to have the land use entitlements along with the lease agreement with all of the deal points ironed out at the city council for approval. The earliest that that'll happen at this point is March 19th, and that's being ambitious.
Thank you. Youth Sports Council, there was no meeting, so that's taken care of. Gateway Committee.
Gateway Committee, we've had a couple of meetings since our last Rec Park Commission, and we've been making some headway on what it is we would like to see down there at the end at Main and Imperial. And we have also had a meeting where we went down there and looked at the area to see what it is we have to work with. And taking a look at, because before we were just looking at an aerial view. And so I suggested let's go down there and meet so that everybody can kind of see the area and see the highway and kind of get an idea of it, because people were saying maybe we want to make it an area where people would go and sit and you know, take their families and you know, so there were we've been throwing out a lot of ideas and what it is that we would like to see in the end. And so there's been a lot of good discussion. A lot of good ideas have been brought to the table. And a lot of good participation, and we're trying to meet about every 2.5, 3 weeks, so we're all coming together and bringing ideas each time, and so I think the progress is being made each time. So we have another meeting coming up. I forget what the date is, but March 5th, that's when we're meeting again. So it's coming along.
Thank you. Department staff reports. Aricia.
Aricia had to leave
I'm
early
sorry.
this evening, so I'll just
okay.
make some highlights in her report, but it's
Wow.
in front of you, and we can answer any questions you might have. I would highlight that spring break camp registrations coming up in March. And the Easter egg hunt's not until April this year, so you'll be hearing more about that next month. And while Sean is here, I'll put him on the spot. We have some exciting pickleball programs going on. Do you want to update everybody?
Yeah, so a couple specialists had reached out to me, Tyler and Ben from the Jocelyn Center, and they were interested in running a pickleball tournament. We have 2 instructors. One's hurt right now, but we have 2 instructors. And we've seen a real big growth in the pickleball, and it keeps growing and growing, and classes are pretty big, and the participation is pretty big. So we're doing our first annual. We've done some round robins, but are doing our inaugural pickleball tournament for the city of El Segundo. We have 32 spots, and it's in April 27th. You put me on the spot. I think I knew the date. April 27th. There's 32 spots. We already have 11 filled already. It's come with a lot of questions. It is a whole new world for the sports guy, and I had no idea. Meredith had introduced it to me a couple years back now. But it's really exciting to see, and people are talking about it, and I'm excited to run the first ever inaugural El Segundo pickleball tournament in April.
Okay, thank you. And is that it for that? Okay. Christopher, Parks Maintenance Superintendent.
Yeah, you have my report. One additional item I wanted to bring to your attention. This last week, we had a resident concerned about weed spraying that was taking place at Holly, Kansas Park. She wanted to know if it was Roundup and why were they spraying near a playground area. Doing some investigation in our contract with Landcare. It was a Landcare staff member. They're contracted not to spray in or around play areas at the parks. So Meredith and I, we had some discussion about this point and so forth, and what we decided was to eliminate any weed spraying at the smaller parks where we do have play areas such as Candy Cane Park, Hilltop, Holly, Kansas, Holly Valley, Camp Eucalyptus, Sycamore Park, Clutters Park, the Washington Playground area. And then we have play areas around the clubhouse. There's a lot of young kids and children activities going on there, so we're going to eliminate it in those areas. The contractor has been apprised of that, and any weed control will be done by mechanical or hand methods. We're taking a look at other open areas such as Memory Row, Imperial Strip area, even Recreation Park. There's just some open areas that it's more practical and feasible to use a spraying technique. I know the Environmental Committee is going to be looking at this issue. I think they have a meeting next week. But I wanted to update you on that issue as well.
Okay, any questions?
Christopher, you and I had spoke about it because it had come out on Facebook,
Correct.
on Parents Network, and I had said to you that, you know, I didn't know if you had seen it, and you said that you did. And so I don't know if you had put an update on there about this, about your findings or what it is that you have spoken to Land Care about this, and that the city is, you know, has asked them not to be spraying at the parks that are going to be, you know, used by the children, and that it will be mechanical or done by hand.
I received an email directly from the resident that did the initial posting, and I replied directly back to her, as well as I received the initial notification through Public Works Department, and I apprised them of how we're going forward with this issue.
But it only went to that one resident, correct?
Correct.
Because I know that there were numerous posts. What I'm saying is, are we going to put anything out there so that it goes to more residents instead of just to that one person?
I don't think that's up to us. That's a private, like, community thing. It's not for us to go, because then we'd have to address every single thing that they post on there and respond every single time that they have a concern. Am I right, Meredith?
Yeah, it's not our practice to post on social media. We have our department page. In fact, the interaction is very minimal, only on our department page. So the city just recently adopted a social media policy, and so it's just not a common practice that we would go and interact in that way. Sometimes how we handle something like that is with a particular person who is posting information, is kindly ask them to copy and paste our email into the comments, and that's perfectly acceptable.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying, so that it would get out there, so that, right, because people were, you know, they kept asking, and you know, how it was going to go, and so that it's not just going just to that one person, whether it was going to be on the city website or something to be addressed more. Okay.
Yeah.
On that same topic, I'm not sure, but I believe that they've actually posted a position for the City of Public Information Officer, PIO. I'm not sure if that's the case, but that might be something to have a department refer to them, and the PIO would then, you know, go into this to the city or something like that, and then would put it either on our city page for people to note, and then go from there. But I believe that's part of the council's direction, is to be more involved in public information and social media.
That's right. So the deputy city manager is in charge of the communications for the city now, and she's just developing an overall citywide communication strategy and plan, which will most likely get implemented in the spring or summer. And so that will be part of sort of the enhancements that the city is trying to make on how to push information out and make sure that we can respond to those properly via social media.
And while we're on the topic, a little PSA. Please, out there, El Segundo, come on in. Bring us your problems. We'd love to talk about them here rather than social media.
Moving to Darnell, acting El Segundo TV manager.
Good evening,
Good evening.
commissioners. You have my report in front of you. I can answer any questions on it. To highlight one thing that we covered this month, I feel like we really were able to capture some video magic at a particular event. It was the El Segundo High School boys basketball game versus Santa Monica Vikings, also known as Cam Night. So I'm not sure if you guys have heard about this around town, but Cameron Carlton, who's a student at the high school, and he has a tremendous love for basketball. He's always tried to make the team and wasn't necessarily successful in making the team. So what he did was he started to work for the team, and he would film all their games, go on the road for them, and he's actually an intern with us. He's an El Segundo TV intern, so he helps us out a lot. But the coach, Coach David March, made a deal with him. He said, hey, if you help me out, I'll give you one game. I'll give you one game of the season. So the last game of the season for the high school basketball season, he let Cameron play. And it was amazing. I don't know if anyone got a chance to go to the game, but if you didn't, I'm encouraging you to watch it because it was a magical night. They had Cameron balloons. The entire crowd had Cam Night T-shirts. Everybody was chanting, Cameron, Cameron. So when he came out, they were chanting him on to get back in. And he's got a shot. He's hitting three-pointers. And it was really a magical night. And so I tipped my hat to David March, Coach David March. And if you haven't had a chance to watch it, I highly encourage you to check it out. Once again, it's the El Segundo High School boys basketball game versus Santa Monica, also known as Cam Night. So if you get a chance, please take a look.
Okay, thank you very much. Department Director's Report, Meredith.
Yes, thank you very much. I'm happy to answer any questions. My report covered a little bit about the Aquatic Center, the Acacia Park meetings, and some of the updated projects that we have going on. One thing I did want to mention at last night's council meeting, they approved the contract and awarded the contract for the Holly Valley Playground replacement. One of the items in that bid package was an alternate bid for short 3-foot fencing along the perimeter of the sidewalks, and I know that we've had conversations about that here at Commission. So the City Council was aware of that, and it is an alternate bid item, something that we can discuss at the next meeting. The City Council wanted to hear the Commission's opinion about that item, whether we should execute that portion of the contract or not, specifically at Holly Valley. So we'll put that on for the next agenda. We can discuss it, and then we can let Public Works know if we want to move forward with that portion or not. If you have the chance to visit Holly Valley Park prior to the meeting, I would suggest doing so.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead.
Question, Meredith. The plunge, do you have an update on the facility repair?
I know that the heater, yes, so it's been down for a couple weeks now, and Public Works had to order the heater. I know it's been shipped, and so it should be arriving in the next week or so, and then they'll be installing it. I don't know how long the install will take and sort of recalibrating everything. I hope it's definitely by mid-March. Would be the
Thank you very
estimate.
much.
Sure.
Okay, Commissioner comments. Commissioner Stolnak.
A couple things. I did attend the last workshop on Acacia and Washington Park last week, and saw the designs that the architects have come up with, which were very nice. And there was a pretty good turnout from residents that were there, and it was nice. Aricea explained the whole background on the pool and the expenses, to explain to the residents what it is that is costing the city in order to keep the pool, and just lay it out there so that the residents are aware of how much that actually costs and how much, or how it's used, how many people actually use it, so that everybody can see that if we keep it, this is what it's costing us. And if we let it go, this is the type of park that we could have. Swing's got the #1 vote to have in the park. The plans that they have these nice big trees. I asked the question, are we going to get those nice big trees, or are we going to get these spindly little trees, you know, and then have to wait years and years for these trees to grow? Some people were concerned with the speed of traffic going up and down that street, and some people would like to see some speed bumps put in on that street, and we're going to put in a request to the city for the city to look at speed bumps on the street. And then we moved on to Washington Park with their design ideas for that. There's much more interest in Acacia Park than there is in Washington. But I think they've come up with some nice designs for both parks. And we'll see that when we have that meeting in March. So I think we have some nice designs to look at. The other thing I wanted to talk about, and this might be for the Environmental Committee, but as far as it's in the park, so that's why I just wanted to mention it. Last night at the high school baseball game, I noticed that there's new blue recycling barrels at Stevenson Field, and I think that they need to be paired with trash cans, because we just had blue recycling barrels, like I think there were 3 of them along the fence, and people are just walking by and throwing their trash in it. So if there isn't a trash can with a recycling barrel, the people aren't going to walk down and throw their trash in the trash can. They're just pitching everything in the recycling barrel. So I think the recycling barrels need to have a lid on it with a small hole, and to force them just to put their recycling items in there. And then we need to have a trash can that's an open lid so they can put the trash in it. And I noticed that when people were just coming out of the bleachers, they weren't even paying attention to it, that it was a recycling can. They were just throwing everything in it. And I hate to see that, because we're not going to clean the trash out, and so everything's just going to get dumped. So I don't know if that's something that's for the Environmental Committee, but it's in the park. So
Yeah, we can take a look at it. I'm not sure, those were blue cans that were placed out by the high school?
it's Stevenson Field.
But by the group that was using the field, or are those blue cans?
I think they're just blue trash cans.
They had the recycling label on it.
Okay.
I'll have to double
We'll
check with
double
staff.
check, but yeah, we can work.
They were the brand new blue recycling barrels with the recycling label on it.
I'm thinking that the group might have placed them out there, but we'll check.
Yeah, and I just saw everybody walking by and throwing their trash in it, and I thought, well, that's a shame.
Yeah, because our containers within the park are the dual trash recycle combination.
So that's all I have.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Farfan. Thank you. Commissioner Loop's not here. Vice Chairperson Davis.
Yeah, about the only thing I have is I know that aquatics has been very busy. I look forward to hearing what's going to happen with future decisions from council and everyone else. And other than that, like the way Acacia looks. I know that it's gotten all the press and it's got all the notoriety because it's been down for so long. So I look forward to that as well. That's it.
Okay, thank you. And I have nothing tonight. We will move to public communications. Seeing none, we'll close public communications. And we'll adjourn to the next regular meeting that's now moved to Wednesday, March 13th, 2019 at 6 p.m. Thank you, everyone.